49. Tell me, Mr. Wick, is this a formal event or a social affair?
Social.
And is this for day or evening?
I need one for day and one for night.
These are the top 20 suit up and gear up scenes in the movies. Kicking things off with Arnold Schwarzenegger is the right thing to do, although I'm not sure how many of you would be familiar with 1986's Raw Deal. Well, none of that matters because when Joseph lays down that duffel bag and executes a classy suit-up, we just know that his ops are going to suffer tremendously. The sequence does go on for a bit, but nobody minds that because it was almost as if Joseph's weapons had a mind of their own. I mean, those guns were so badass that they got their own freaking guitar intro. Yes, Arnold was the king of action during the 80s, and this sequence is just one of several others that validate my statement.
Why are they doing this?
They're obeying orders, sir. It's their duty.
Kurt Russell has never disappointed when it comes to the roles he plays, but one such role that's majorly overlooked is that of Todd in 1985's Soldier. As he prepares to take on his supposedly superior enemies, Todd gives a little speech to Sandra as he equips himself with all kinds of weapons, and that adds some depth to an otherwise standard gearing up moment.
What are you gonna do?
I'm going to kill them all, sir.
You can see it in his eyes that he really wishes to show gratitude to those who've helped him, but due to his emotional distance issues, the best way for him to do it is to wage war. And you know what? I sure as heck don't have any issues with that at all. Combating xenomorphs in itself is a highly ambitious task, but these folks right here don't seem to know the word fear. The prep scene from Aliens right before infiltrating the base was a hectic sequence which showed us a lot of weapons, and by that I mean a lot of weapons. At one point, those giant guns that Vasquez was holding didn't even matter because you had stuff like mini tanks and straight up jets joining in on the fun. If I had an artillery filled with these, then I would have easily gone straight for the Alien Queen, but I also need to give these guys the benefit of the doubt for not really knowing what was in store for them.
Get on the running line! Yo! Move it out, goddammit! Get hot! 1, 2, 3! Come on, get out, get out, get out! Move it out, move it out, move it out! Move it out, move it out, move it out!
I'm sure you weren't expecting a comedy film from Edgar Wright's Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, but here we are with a hilariously brilliant scene from Hot Fuzz. Nicholas Angel and Danny Butterman gave us a treat as they prep up their weapons, and Nicholas actually takes it a step further by riding a white freaking horse once he's totally locked and loaded.
Want to do something useful?
Bro made sure he was going to look graceful while shooting at the elderly, and I have no issues with that at all. The fact that Simon Pegg actually helped write this script makes the scene all the more entertaining. Plus, we need to remember that these guys are British cops, so access to guns and other extreme weaponry isn't as easy it would be in certain other parts of the world.
Morning.
Check him when ready. Armor 5-1, light up and ready. Stars 4-1 up and ready.
Irene!
For flag, copy Irene.
Irene!
There's a reason the army gets such high budgets for weapons, and this scene does a decent job of showing us what all said budget entails. It's always great to see a movie about American soldiers played by Britishers, Scots, and several other nationalities that are anything but American. Not that I'm complaining though. You've got folks like Tom Hardy, Ewan McGregor, Orlando Bloom and Eric Bana together in the same movie. The battle prep scene had everything you'd expect, with the soldiers getting their guns, rifles, knives, grenades, tanks and God knows what else ready for action. At one point, I was wondering if they were actually preparing for Somalia or World War III. And yes, the background music definitely made it a lot more epic. Ridley Scott really knew what he was doing until the mid-2000s. It's rather unfortunate that his recent offerings haven't been hitting as hard as a legendary director's filmography should. If you ever wanted to see how American a house could get, well, this is the scene that gets it right. G.I. Joe Retaliation had a super stacked up cast. Heck, forget Bruce Willis and Dwayne Johnson. They got Lee Byung-hun, aka the freaking frontman from Squid Game, playing Storm Shadow. You could even say that seeing all the weapons in General Colton's house may have given him some inspiration for his popular Korean game show, especially the killing aspect of it. Anyway, this big reveal shocks one and all, as even dudes like Roadblock and Snake Eyes can't hide their surprise from the General. It's basically a fantasy come true for all American bros who love to turn their homes into secret weapons factories.
Back for a second time.
Speaking of which, here's a fun fact for you. The house where they shot this scene isn't a film set, but it's actually the home of Bruce Willis. Now, I don't know if he actually keeps those weapons in real life as well, but I sure would love to imagine so.
Hey. That was mine.
This really is Patton's gun, isn't it?
Gift from his family.
What an honor.
Number 2. Frank Castle is dead. He died with his family.
Yes, I know the Netflix version is peak, but that doesn't take anything away from Thomas Jane, who gave us a golden era level Punisher back in 2004. I still love this movie, especially the action part of it, because it's so comic accurate in terms of how strategic Frank Castle generally is, whether it comes to his killing prowess or even his sick sense of dry humour. What really stands out for me in this prep scene is the voiceover of Frank's voice playing over the entire thing, telling us, or rather convincing us, that this is the only way for him to gain justice over his opponents. Thomas Jane's portrayal is stoic, calm, unpredictable and also brutal, all of which are typical characteristics of the Punisher, are shown in proper proportion here as he equips himself with all kinds of weapons. Bro wasn't going to leave anything to chance at all, and the final sequence that follows his prep is a strong testament to that statement. You know what, they should definitely do some kind of multiverse concept where John Bernthal's Punisher at least meets and interacts with Thomas Jane's Punisher, just for the sake of fan service.
Not vengeance. Punishment.
One last ride.
Remember when Dom Toretto said, "One last ride"? Yeah, so that was a freaking lie. At this rate, these movies are going to start releasing every alternate weekend. Not that I'm complaining though, because we got to see a pretty badass gear-up scene involving Dom, Brian and Shaw as well. It's got all the ingredients you'd expect to see in a Fast and Furious movie. There's weapons, cars, and most importantly, family.
The most important thing in life will always be the people in this room. Right here, right now. Salute me, familia.
One of the main reasons why I love this scene is that it shows the difference between the characters and their respective mindsets, as all three of them prepare for war by stocking up their ammunition. You know stuff's going to go down and it ain't going to be pretty, but you still want to watch what happens next because the build-up has gotten hype AF. Yeah, this was back when we as fans would allow the nonsensical violations of physics laws in these movies because the entertainment factor still held some value in our eyes. I genuinely can't say the same about all the movies that came after this one. The Evil Dead franchise has given us one of the few heroes in the horror franchise who actually gained more popularity than the villains. Ash Williams is a legend in his own right, and most of his fame came from this one single scene where he equips his arm with a freaking chainsaw. Yes, This still sounds like a ridiculous concept today, even with anime like Chainsaw Man being so popular. So you can only imagine how people lost their freaking minds when they saw this suit-up sequence. It's important to note that even though Evil Dead 2 had a higher budget than its predecessor, it was still nowhere close to a standard studio's production costs. This is why the suiting up felt so raw and almost pure in a way, because most of it had to be done without using any fancy effects. Of course, the cherry on the cake is without a doubt the actual chainsaw getting fitted to Ash's arm, but this wasn't enough for Bro, so we decided to give us one of the most iconic lines in horror history right after. Yeah, if all of this jazz doesn't make you feel groovy, then I don't think anything ever will.
But we could hold our own in the fight. And it turned out we had a unique skill. We were drift compatible.
Ah yes, how can we have a list like this and not include at least one scene from Pacific Rim? I'd like to include the very first suiting up moment for this entry because it rarely gets mentioned, even though I feel it's a top-class sequence. Remember, we didn't know anything about Jaegers or how they functioned back then, as this was a completely new concept. Well, not entirely, because we did have Neon Genesis Evangelion and the Iron Man movies for reference, but you get what I mean, don't you?
The drift. Jaeger tech. Based on DARPA jet fighter neural systems.
Anyway, seeing the Beckett bros getting ready to take on a kaiju was epic to say the least. Like, watching them get into the basic white suits was cool enough as it is, but then they just step into this gigantic gypsy danger and win all of our hearts. The CGI and visual effects were top notch, and trust me, that did make a big impact when it came to assessing the film. Man, if only we got to see a nice sequel to continue the story. Yeah, I know you might mention something called Uprising in the comments, but I refuse to acknowledge that abomination's existence.
Worry about yourself, kiddo.
Top 10 time calls for real legends to show themselves, so I'm kicking it off with one of the most badass dudes to have come out of the 21st century. Keanu Reeves is the perfect nice guy in real life, and the perfect assassin on the big screen, which actually says a lot about his versatility. The first ever John Wick movie pulled out all the stops to ensure that we'd fall in love with a murderous anti-hero, and the prep scene for the Red Circle Club had crowds all over the world cheering for a mass assassination. The cold nature with which John prepares for his plan kind of feels like how I prepare myself when I've got to go out for a family dinner with my girlfriend's parents. The moment Bro laid out all of his weapons, we knew we were going to be in for a treat later, which actually did happen because the Red Circle scene is an S-tier moment for sure. I also love the fact that John keeps a subcompact as a sidearm for his pistol. It's such a small detail, but says a lot about how prepared he is when hunting a target. And remember, this is back when John Wick liked to keep a low profile.
Are you here on business, sir? Afraid so, Francis. Why don't you take the night off? Thank you, sir.
Chris Hemsworth has made some smart decisions in his life. One of them was becoming the almighty Thor in the MCU, and the other was becoming Tyler Rake from the Extraction franchise to make sure people don't remember him for just one role. And if I'm being honest here, I definitely prefer the latter because it presents a more realistic character who inspires human beings. Yes, being the God of Thunder is definitely an elite flex, but your fans can't exactly hope for Odin to bless them with hammers in the future, can they? To become Tyler Rake, you just need years of hard work, training, and an epic set of weapons, just like the ones we see here when he prepares to take on Zurab and his men. The weaponry on display was the kind of stuff that would win you wars all by yourself, so it was safe to say that our man was never going to lose to his opponents, even though it did get a bit dramatic in the grand finale.
Finger?
Chris Hemsworth's facial expressions here may not mean much, but they actually complement the suiting up and gearing up, although I suppose he could also be feeling guilty for cheating on Mjolnir in Stormbreaker.
Don't do this.
Stay with her. Get them out.
Steven Steven Seagal may not look nothing like what he used to during his prime, so let's go all the way back to 1990 for some pleasant nostalgia. It's nothing too fancy or out of the blue, but the nonchalance with which John Hatcher tests out his weapons is what makes it stand out. It starts off as any typical prep scene, as Hatcher gets his supplies along with a catchy quote, but bro knows better than to just look at the goods, so he tests out the rifles one by one. What follows after is an impressive display as he absolutely annihilates whatever's in front of him, signalling to us that this is indeed what's going to help him win this war. Yeah, there's a reason this movie's called The Mark of Death. Also, the background music kind of sounds like it's supposed to be in some funk club, but if you think about it, people in the fields of murder and assassination would consider this gearing up sequence to be the perfect tango before the storm. But on a serious note, it really is quite surprising to see what Steven Seagal has become now, especially after witnessing his greatness in films like this for years.
Alright, you heard the slide click a little, right?
Massive good. Forward, Jamaica.
It's really hard for me to see John Krasinski and not think about Jim Halpert from The Office. It's not even his fault though. Bro's done a lot of other stuff, most notably A Quiet Place and a cameo as the dumbest man in the universe, Reed Richards. Anyway, my focus for this entry is a rapid fire gearing up moment from 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Yeah, I know this movie has its issues with historical accuracies, but look at the freaking pacing here. Jack Silver and his men show us with great precision why they were members of the Navy SEAL, the Marines, and other such organizations. These men waste no time at all as they proceed to equip themselves with all the weapons that they'll need for the task at hand with no time wasted. I mean, at one point, you almost feel as if you're watching some live-action version of Call of Duty. The adrenaline rush almost replicated itself in our own heads, and Michael Bay's typical directorial style takes over to give us an extremely solid offering. I suppose this is what Jim does whenever Dwight's looking for him in the office.
Listen up! None of you have to go. But we are the only help they have. 2 vehicles staged and ready. Let's go. Move, move!
Does it hurt when you get shot?
I sense injuries. The data could be called pain.
John, help me with the light. Will these heal up?
Yes.
Good.
Yep, Arnie's totally going to dominate this list because the man has way too many titles to his name. So this sequence is actually from the director's cut of Judgment Day, and it adds so much more depth to the Terminator as a character. Here we can see Sarah Connor removing the processor chips from the Terminator, eventually leading to him being able to learn without restrictions.
My CPU is a neural net processor, a learning computer. But Skynet presets the switch to read only when we are sent out alone.
Doesn't want you to do too much thinking, huh?
No.
Can we reset the switch?
It actually helps the T-800 understand and bond with humans like John, which eventually leads to his actions in the grand finale of the film. There are some neat bits here which showcase the functionality of the robot killer, and with Sarah finally allowing him to become an even deadlier version of what he was before, it definitely added a lot more context to Arnold's behaviour after this point. Essentially, you could say that Sarah Connor wanted to make sure she had the T-800 in prime condition because she had an even deadlier Terminator chasing after her. Yeah, I'll admit that I understand why the scene got cut from the theatrical release, but it makes for a great value addition to the cinephiles who want to know more about the specifics of the movie. After all, this was the moment that literally flipped the switch.
Can you see the pin switch? No! Out
of my way, John.
Don't kill him.
Yes, I know this one's breaking the rules of this video, but the Punisher has never been one to play by said rules, so you can say I'm pulling a meta strategy here. Also, this is my channel, so I can bend the rules every now and then, alright? We already covered the 2004 movie with Thomas Jane, and no hate to him because he obviously made it to this video, but damn, there's no way any version of Punisher is going to beat John Bernthal. The prep scene here is like showcasing class and danger, but personifying them as one single person. Frank Castle is known for being a highly intelligent operator, meaning his brute strength and anger are secondary assets, even though they make up a huge chunk of what's made the character such a beloved name amongst audiences. This is exactly what we see here as he makes highly calculated preparations for his enemies with an impressive range of weapons and an even more impressive set of spots to hide those weapons. The man was clearly considering every possible outcome during this scene, and he made sure to narrow down the odds of failure to less than 0. And yes, bro suits up here as well, so that's a whole added bonus to an already elite scene. The Rambo franchise is all about masculinity and embracing the bro within, but we all know the reason it became such a big financial success was because of all the weapons and fighting and bloodshed. None of that would be possible without epic prep scenes, and this one in particular is rather interesting. We see Rambo slowly and meticulously planning his entire attack strategy, and he equips himself with so much stuff that it makes you wonder if he's taking on Thanos and his whole army. Bro was so careful with his methods that even the enemy would have lost hope if they actually saw the whole process in advance. There are so many neat tricks on display as well, such as the focus increasing on Sylvester Stallone's muscles when he's sharpening his knife. It's such a simple movement, but it creates a massive impact because of how it's made to seem like an enhanced rendition. Of course, Rambo himself isn't holding back anywhere, as he seems to be determined to take on the whole world with his artillery. The background score was so good that I sometimes play it while I'm trying to tie my own shoelaces, just to feel the euphoria. Bro was definitely preparing as he was going to become the president of the world. However, it does feel a bit disheartening to know that a lot of this stuff didn't even make it into the main battle. That's right, the stroke of equality strikes once again on the TV region, and rightfully so, because Ellen Ripley is a certified badass to her core. The same woman who feared and trembled in the presence of a standard xenomorph back in the 1979 Alien film is now equipping herself to take on a freaking alien queen in the 1986 sequel. It's an extended sequence which focuses on Ripley's keen sense of awareness, marked by how she's making sure to leave no stone unturned in her prep. However, the reason this scene lands so high on this list is also because we're witnessing greatness unfold in front of us. This isn't the same Ripley who played victim the whole time in the previous film. This is a woman who's ready to fight whatever obstacles come her way, even if it so happens to be an oversized monster. Also, I know it isn't technically part of this particular scene, but the part where she gets into that power loader is obviously one of the most badass moments with a female lead ever.
Get away from her.
We all know the epic line that follows, and I must say, this is quite literally a much better representation of feminism compared to most of the modern stuff Hollywood is trying to shove down our throats. I suppose the industry isn't too different from facehuggers, eh?
Recontoured grips, flared magwell for easier reloads. And I know you'll appreciate the custom porting.
John Wick has been such a dominant name in the world of badass characters that it's almost surprising not to see him at number 1. Well, it's not like number 2 is a bad position either, and coincidentally, the movie in focus is also John Wick 2. The suiting up and gearing up sequences was something else, regardless of whether we were watching our favourite assassin with the tailor or the sommelier, who I believe was a great addition to the movie. As far as his loadout is concerned, just listen to these weapons, okay? There's a Glock 34, a Glock 26, an AR-15, a Benelli M4, knives, and a bulletproof Italian tactical suit.
I know of your past fondness for the German varietals, but I can wholeheartedly endorse the new breed of Austrians. Glock 34 and 26.
At this point, Bro is literally a walking cheat code, especially if you consider the fact that he's the most skilled fighter in this universe. So, what really works here is the classiness of the sequence, because it's not your typical tough guy equipping himself with determination. What we're seeing is a man known as death itself, slowly getting ready to inflict impending demise upon those who dare to get in his way. Also, I believe that the tailor shown here is also the same one who actually did the outfits for Keanu Reeves across the John Wick franchise.
49. Tell me, Mr. Wick, is this a formal event or a social affair?
Social.
And is this for day or evening?
I need one for day and one for night.
He's already appeared earlier, but for some reason, I feel if I put any other name at number 1, then I'd be doing a great disservice. Yes, there's no one on the planet who could have replicated what Arnold Schwarzenegger had achieved during his prime era. Bro conquered the world of bodybuilding so many times that he figured he might as well do the same thing in Hollywood as well. And oh boy, did it pay off or what. Commando remains one of the peak examples of giga-chads going about their jobs, and this gearing up scene with John Matrix totally encapsulates it. Our man had pretty much all the weapons he needed to conquer a small country, let alone his target base, but what really stands out the most is Arnie's physique. Yes, he's trained very hard for years to achieve that body, but simply having muscles isn't enough to get the job done. The aura that John exhibits even while changing into his battle attire is undeniable, and what affected me the most was the immense focus he showcased here. This is an elite fighter who's going to wreak havoc on his opponents, and he doesn't waver for even a single second during the entirety of this scene. Sure, it's barely a minute long, but believe me when I say it's like the best minute of your life. Okay, now that just sounds like something a beta male would say to his ex. Hope you liked the video. Please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.